Learning objectives. After completing this module, learners will be able to describe how the Gurjara Pratiharas, Rashtrakutas, Palas, Cholas and Chauhanas emerged in the Indian subcontinent after the 7th century in the Indian subcontinent. Describe and understand how the new order transformed the lives of people through wars and taxation. Describe the rise of Chahamanas or the Chauhans, who ruled over the region around Delhi and Ajmer. Describe the rise of Muhammad Ghazni. Describe and understand the way Cholas came into power and reigned for a long time, expanding their territory. The emergence of new dynasties. The 7th century saw many big landlords and warrior chiefs in various parts of the continent. The existing kings recognized them as their subordinates or samantas. The duties of samantas towards their overlords included bringing them gifts, attending their courts, providing them military support. As the clout of the samantas grew, they declared themselves Mahasamanta or Mahamandaleshwar, lord of a circle or region. There have also been instances of Mahasamantas asserting independence from their overlords. Danti Durga, a Rashtrakuta chief in the mid-8th century, is an example. Initially a subordinate to the Chalukyas of Karnataka, he claimed independence from them and founded a kingdom of his own in the Deccan. He performed a ceremony called Hiranyagarbha, meaning the golden womb. It was a belief that if a sacrificer performed this ritual with the help of a Brahmin, he would attain rebirth as a Kshatriya even if he was not a Kshatriya by birth. There are also examples of men like Kadamba Mayura Sharman and the Gurjara Pratihara Harichandra who were Brahmanis, but they gave up their traditional profession, adopted the Kshatriya status and used their military skills to establish their own kingdoms in Rajasthan and Karnataka. Administration in the kingdoms. The new kings often used boastful titles like Maharaja Adhiraja, Great King, Overlord of Kings, Tribhuvana Chakravartin, Lord of the Three Worlds, etc. Despite being so prideful, they shared powers with their samantas, peasants, traders and the brahmanas. To obtain resources, these states often persuaded or forced producers like the peasants or cattle keepers to hand over a part of their produce to the state. Sometimes, produce was collected as rent by a lord since he owned the land. Similarly, revenues were earned from the traders. The Chola inscriptions talk about more than 400 different kinds of taxes. A tax called vetti was not charged in cash but in the form of forced labor. Kadamai or land revenue was also imposed. Taxes were also charged for thatching a house, using ladder to climb palm trees, or pay a cess on succession to family property. These resources were used to finance the king's establishment, build temples and forts, fight wars to obtain more wealth by way of plunder and gain access to more land and trade routes. Usually, members of influential families were appointed as officials to collect revenue. These positions mostly would be hereditary. In the army too, the close relatives of the king held key positions. Prashastis and land grants. Prashastis are detailed accounts of how the rulers wanted them to be glorified. They wanted the use of words like valiant, victorious warriors, etc. for themselves. These accounts may not carry much truth. However, Prashastis were composed by Brahmanas who on and off helped in the administration. The Brahmanas in return were rewarded by the kings by a grant of land. It was recorded on copper plates and given to the one who was received land. A Sanskrit Prashasti found in Gwalior, Madhya Pradesh, eulogized Nagabhata, a Pratihara king, as to how he, even as a prince, could bring the kings of Andhra, Sendhava, Sindh, Vidarbha, part of Maharashtra, and Kalinga, part of Odisha, now Odisha, to their knees. He emerged victorious in war against Chakrayuddha, the ruler of Kannauj, the king of Vanga, part of Bengal, Anartha, part of Gujarat, Malava, part of Madhya Pradesh, Kirata, forest peoples, Turushka, Turks, Vatsa, Matsya, both kingdoms in North India. A long Sanskrit poem giving detailed history of kings who ruled over Kashmir was composed by an author, Kalhana, in the 12th century. He gathered information from inscriptions, documents, eyewitness accounts and earlier histories to compose the poem. In contrast to other writers of Prashastis, he has also criticized the rulers and their policies. Warfare for wealth. The ruling dynasties, though based in a specific region, attempted to display their power in two ways. 1. Trying to bring more areas under their control. The city of Kannauj in the Ganga Valley particularly was an area eyed by all three dynasties, Gurjara, Pratihara, Rashtrakuta, and Pala dynasties, fought for centuries to gain control over Kannauj. Historians often refer to their conflict as the tripartite struggle. 2. Building huge temples was one way of power display. Hence, when the rulers invaded other regions, they targeted rich temples to plunder. Sultan Mahmud of Ghazni, Afghanistan, was one such ruler. He ruled from 997 to 1030. His empire included parts of Central Asia, Iran, and the northwestern part of the subcontinent. During his invasions, he targeted rich Hindu temples, including the Somnath temple in Gujarat. He used the loot to build the capital city of Ghazni. Ghazni entrusted al-Biruni, a scholar, to write about people of the subcontinent. Al-Biruni's Kitabul-Hind, about the subcontinent, written in Arabic, in consultation with many Sanskrit scholars, is an important source for the historians. Other rulers engaged in warfare were the Chahamanas or Chauhans. They ruled regions around Delhi and Ajmer. Their attempt to expand control to the west and east were countered by the Chalukyas, Gujarat, and Gahadawalas, western Uttar Pradesh. The best Chahamana ruler, Prithviraj III, 1168 to 1192, defeated the Afghan ruler Sultan Muhammad Ghori in 1191, but was defeated by Ghori in 1192. The Cholas, from Urayur to Thanjavur. Muttarayyar, a minor chiefly family having control over the Kaveri Delta, was subordinate to the Pallava kings. Vijayalaya, who belonged to the ancient chiefly family of the Cholas from Urayur, militarily took control of the delta from Muttayyarayyar in the middle of the 9th century. He built the towns of Thanjavur and a temple dedicated to goddess Nishumbhasudini there. Vijayalaya's successors expanded the kingdom in terms of size and power both. They annexed the Pandyans and Pallava territories to the south and north to their kingdom. Rajaraja I occupied the throne in 985. His conquest over most of the regions around made him the most powerful Chola king. He also reorganized the administration of his empire. His son Rajendra I followed in his footsteps and conquered regions as far as the Ganga Valley, Sri Lanka and countries of Southeast Asia. He also developed a navy for these expeditions. The Cholas, temples and bronze sculptures. Huge temples built by Raja and Rajendra in Thanjavur and Gangaikonda Cholapuram are known for their architectural and sculptural splendor. Chola temples often became central to the habitation that grew around them. The temples also became centers for craft article production. Temples also owned land gifted by rulers and other rich people. The produce of this land was used for the upkeep of all the specialists who worked at or lived near the temple. This class included the priests, garland makers, cooks, sweepers, musicians, dancers, etc. Not just worship, the temples were a hub of economic, social, and cultural life. The superior craftsmanship of the Chola period reflects in its bronze sculptures, considered to be the finest in the world. Though most images are those of deities, some are of devotees too. The Cholas' agriculture and irrigation. A good number of achievements made by the Chola kings can be attributed to the developments in agriculture. Kaveri River, which was part of the region controlled by the Cholas, branched off into many channels before draining out in the Bay of Bengal. Its channels provided the necessary moisture for agriculture of crops, particularly rice. Agriculture was practiced in some parts of Tamil Nadu earlier, but it was not before the 5th and 6th century that large-scale agriculture, especially of rice, began here. Forests were cleared and land was levelled for agriculture. To prevent flooding in the delta region, embankments were built and canals were dug to carry water to fields. Wells were dug and huge tanks were built to collect rainwater to provide for artificial irrigation. A majority of new rulers and villagers took active interest in organizing labor and resources for irrigation, maintaining sources of artificial irrigation, and taking decisions regarding sharing of water. The administrations of the empire won. With the passage of time, the settlement of peasants called Ur proposed because of the improved means of irrigation. Groups of such villages formed a larger unit called Nadu. The village council and the Nadu undertook many administrative functions. The Chola kings honoured some rich landlords with the titles like Muvin Davelin, a velen or peasant serving 3 kings, Arayar, chief, etc. They were also given important offices of the state and the centre. The Chola kings gave different kinds of land grants. Brahmadaya or land grant to a Brahmana was one of them. It was recorded on copper plates and given to the receiver of the land. The Chola kings permitted the Brahmanas who received a land grant for the following. The receiver of land could collect taxes from it. He could also collect taxes imposed by judicial officers as fines, tax on betel leaves, on woven clothes and vehicles. He could build large rooms with upper stories of baked bricks. He could get wells dug, plant trees and thorny bushes. If required, he could also get canals constructed for irrigation. He should build embankments to ensure that water was not wasted. Other kinds of land grants by Chola kings were Vellan Vagai, land of the non-Brahmana peasant proprietors; Shalabhoga, land for the maintenance of a school; Devadana, Tirunamattukanni, land gifted to temples; Palichandam, land donated to Jain institutions. The administration of the empire too. As a result of land grant of Brahmadeya, Brahmana habitation, like other regions in southern India, grew in the Kaveri Valley too. A sabha or assembly of prominent Brahmana landlords took care of the Brahmadeyas. These were competent assemblies whose decisions were etched on the stone walls of temples. Nagarams or associations of traders were also involved in administrative activities sometimes. Inscriptions from Uttara Merur in Chingalput district, Tamil Nadu, elaborate on the functioning of a sabha. Sabhas had separate committee for irrigation, gardens or temples, etc. According to the Uttara Merur inscription, the aspirants to a sabha should fulfill the following conditions. The aspirants should be owners of land from which land revenue is collected. They should possess a house of their own. They should be in the age group of 35 to 70 years. They should be accomplished and honest administrators. They should have knowledge of the Vedas. Anyone who has been a member of any committee in the last 3 years would not be eligible to become a member of another committee. Anyone who fails to submit his own accounts as well as those of his relatives would not qualify to contest elections. Summary. Let us summarize what we have learned. Many states such as Gurjara Pratiharas, Rashtrakutas, Palas, Cholas and Chahmanas or Chauhans emerged in the Indian subcontinent after the 7th century. In the mid-8th century, Danti Durga, a Rashtrakuta chief, overthrew his Chalukya overlord and performed the Hiranyagarbha, the golden womb ritual. The producers, namely peasants, cattle keepers and artisans, were often exploited and forced to surrender part of their produce. Revenue was also collected from traders. The inscriptions of the Cholas who ruled in Tamil Nadu describe more than 400 different kinds of taxes. These resources were used to finance the king's establishment and for the construction and maintenance of temples and forts and to fight wars, which would then yield more wealth. In the middle of the 19th century, Vijayalaya from the ancient chiefly families of the Cholas from Urayur captured the delta from the Muttar Rayar. The successors of Vijayalaya, including Raja Raja I, who was considered the most powerful Chola ruler and became king in 985, expanded the kingdom in both size and power. The making of bronze images was the most distinctive craft associated with temples. New developed